Birth injury can manifest itself in many different forms. It's highly variable. One of the most common things that we see in birth injury cases is respiratory distress immediately after delivery. Child is delivered blue, not crying. APGAR scores are very low, and that usually prompts a rapid response by the neonatal team to assess that child's conditions. It could result in, if it's an HIE or hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, where there was a lack of oxygen or blood flowing to the brain as a result of a delay in delivery or an improper delivery or whatever may have prompted that. Typically, those are the signs that you'll see immediately. It may result in seizures developing shortly thereafter. It may require, based upon the child's respiratory distress, it may require immediate intubation and mechanical ventilation. There's a host of different things that can occur, and those are probably the most typical that I'll see in a neurologic birth injury type case, particularly where it involves an hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. After that, and after child may find themselves in a neonatal intensive care unit for weeks, months, sometimes close to a year's time, depending upon the nature of the injury and the catastrophic consequences that have occurred. After that, what the parents will then see with regular visits to the pediatrician and oftentimes the multiple pediatric specialists that the child's seeing, whether it's pediatric neurology, pediatric nephrology, pediatric gastroenterology. It could be a multitude of gastrointestinal issues, kidney-related issues, respiratory issues that persist, very often respiratory issues that persist, where the child's being seen by various specialists along with the pediatrician. They'll be looking for developmental milestones and whether or not the child is achieving developmental milestones. Oftentimes, tragically, children who suffer a significant brain injury will not meet their developmental milestones, and this will manifest itself through difficulty performing, whether you're talking about certain tasks of grabbing or fine motor skills, grabbing certain things, and it could be also developmental motor skills such as walking and crawling and those types of things as well. So all of that has to be evaluated, and not just when the first signs are witnessed or observed that a birth injury occurred, but how it progresses. And there are some cases where there's a suspected birth injury that it will not manifest itself that quickly. APGAR scores may be marginal. The child may not have to be swept into the neonatal intensive care unit for a long period of time, but nevertheless, there are developmental issues that persist as a child grows, and particularly up to the age of 2 to 3 is when they're looking at, when the pediatricians and the other pediatric specialists are looking at whether or not a child is achieving their developmental milestones. And then certainly thereafter, as a child becomes more cognitive and starts learning and potentially stating their alphabet or in becoming much more engaged, whether we're talking about vision or hearing and things along those lines, it may be difficult for pediatric specialists or even the parents to identify those issues until a child becomes more mobile and active to really appreciate whether or not they have vision problems or whether they have hearing problems, or whether or not their communication skills or their cognitive or their cognition is somehow affected as a result of the suspected birth injury. And all of that is not to suggest that there is an actionable birth injury cause of action. All that suggests is that there was an injury that occurred at the time of the birth. It's for the attorney who specializes in pediatric malpractice cases to decipher those birth injuries that were unavoidable based upon the circumstances involved, as opposed to those types of cases that are actionable and recoverable for the catastrophically injured child.